What would you do if your neighbor took it upon herself to alter your property without your permission? Sounds outrageous, right? Now imagine this. She doesn't just mess with your flowers or lawn. No, she cuts a whole asterisk through your fence. A fence you built carefully. A fence that serves a very serious purpose. One that, if tampered with, could lead to something way bigger than a neighborhood argument. That's exactly what happened in this story. It's wild, it's ridiculous, and it all starts with a woman. Let's just call her Karen Star. Now, we all know the type. The self-appointed boss of the neighborhood, always peeking through the blinds, filing complaints over grass height, barking dogs, or someone parking slightly over the line. In this neighborhood, Karen wasn't just asterisk problem. She was the asterisk problem. The person telling this story lives in a quiet area governed by a homeowners association, an HOA. The HOA has a bunch of rules. Some make sense, others just make your life harder. But Karen, she didn't just follow the rules. She weaponized them. Constant emails, printed notes on doors, pictures of people's yards sent to the board. She was that kind of neighbor. Now, let's talk about the person behind the fence, our narrator. Unlike Karen, they kept to themselves. Quiet, respectful, and someone who had a pretty unique setup in their backyard. You see, they weren't just an animal lover. They were a certified wildlife rescuer. Years of training, permits, and inspections allowed them to care for injured or abandoned animals, especially wolves. Yes, actual wolves. Not dogs that look like wolves, but real rescued wolves that couldn't be returned to the wild. Everything was by the book. The enclosure in the backyard met all the state and local regulations. The animals were contained behind reinforced fencing that ran deeper than most people's basements. It wasn't just strong, it was fortress-level secure. And for years, there were no problems. The animals stayed safe. The neighbors stayed safe. Life was quiet. Well, as quiet as an asterisk could be with Karen constantly complaining. Karen, of course, hated the fence. She said it was ugly. She said it ruined the flow of the neighborhood. She even claimed it made the block look like a prison yard. She had no idea what was behind it. The HOA didn't know either, because the setup was completely legal and private. The wolves were not visible, not loud, and definitely not a danger, unless someone did something stupid. Now, remember, the fence wasn't just for privacy. It was for asterisk containment star, a safety measure, both for the animals and the people around. But Karen didn't care. She thought the fence violated the HOA's aesthetic guidelines, and she wasn't going to stop until it was gone. And then she snapped. No one knows exactly what pushed her over the edge that day. Maybe she was having a bad morning. Maybe she thought no one was home. Maybe she just wanted to prove she was right. But she marched over to the property with a tool in hand, probably some bowl cutters or a hacksaw, and she sliced through the fence. Just like that. She had no idea what was about to happen. She didn't knock. She didn't ask. She didn't even send a warning email. She just acted. She probably thought she was doing the neighborhood a favor. Cleaning up the eyesore, maybe, showing that she was in control. But she wasn't in control. Not even close. What she didn't realize was that, in cutting that fence, she had just removed the only barrier between her quiet little world and a pack of wolves. And not just any wolves. These were animals that had come from rough situations. Some had been mistreated, others had been abandoned. All were in the process of healing. They weren't aggressive, but they were alert, sensitive, cautious. They knew how to stay inside the boundaries until the boundaries disappeared. And in that moment, they did. One by one, the wolves noticed the gap. They didn't panic. They didn't charge. They simply wandered out. Curious, free. And Karen? She had no idea what she had just unleashed. Karen was still standing there when the first wolf stepped through the gap. She didn't scream. Not at first. She blinked, probably confused, not even realizing what she was looking at. Maybe she thought it was a large husky. Maybe she assumed it was just a stray. But then another followed. And another. Big, silent, graceful. Not barking. Not growling. Just moving. And that's when reality probably hit her like a truck. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened. And then she did scream. But let's rewind just a little. While Karen was outside violating private property, the homeowner was inside, doing what most people do on a quiet morning, having coffee, checking emails, nothing unusual. There was no reason to suspect someone would literally cut open a fence door. But a strange sound caught their attention. Not the wolves. They were trained and quiet. It was Karen's voice, loud and panicked, echoing from the yard. At first, the homeowner thought maybe one of the wolves had gotten startled. Maybe a neighbor's dog had come too close. They rushed outside, and what they saw was almost too ridiculous to believe. There was Karen, standing frozen, maybe 5 feet from the edge of the fence. And walking around her, sniffing the air and occasionally glancing up, were half a dozen large, muscular, and very calm wolves. Karen was shaking. Her phone was in her hand. She kept looking at it, unsure if she should call someone or run. But that's the thing. Running would have been the worst idea. These wolves weren't aggressive, but sudden movements, those were unpredictable. Meanwhile, the wolves, they weren't bothered. They didn't see Karen as a threat or prey, or even very interesting. They were more curious about their new surroundings, plants, smells, space. The world beyond the fence was new, and while they didn't bolt away, they were exploring. The homeowner knew they had seconds to act. They had trained for situations like this, though never because of someone intentionally breaching their property. They grabbed a whistle kept by the door, blew it in a specific pattern, and grabbed a pouch of treats from a cabinet. 1 sharp whistle, then 2 short bursts. That sound? That was a cue. The wolves perked up, all of them. Instantly, their heads turned toward the sound like a group of trained dogs, which, in many ways, they were. Not pets, but not wild anymore either. They had routines, signals, conditioning. Slowly, the homeowner stepped into the yard, calm and steady. No yelling, no panic, just confidence and direction. They tossed a few treats in the grass, repeated the whistle signal, and waited. It took a minute, maybe 2, but it worked. One by one, the wolves turned away from Karen and trotted toward the treats, then toward the sound of their caretaker's voice. Karen, still wide-eyed and frozen, finally spoke. And it wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a question. It was something like, "Asterisk, are those wolves? You can't have wolves here." Asterisk. But she was wrong. The homeowner could have wolves there, legally, safely, with state and local approval. What the asterisk couldn't have was a random neighbor trespassing, damaging property, and causing an actual safety concern. As the last wolf returned through the gap, the homeowner gently guided him back into the enclosure and tossed in a few more treats. Then they closed the temporary gate, secured it, and turned to face Karen, who now looked like she'd seen a ghost. "You need to leave," they said, calm but firm. Karen stammered. She pointed at the fence. She muttered something about the HOA, about dangerous animals, about property values. But her voice was shaking. She wasn't in control anymore, and she knew it. What she didn't know, at least not yet, was that she'd just broken multiple laws. Trespassing, vandalism, reckless endangerment, all of it, and it was all about to come back to bite her. But for that brief moment, as the homeowner stood silently and the wolves gathered calmly behind the fence, Karen had nothing left to say. After Karen was asked to leave, she stumbled back down the driveway, her mind racing. She couldn't believe what just happened. She'd wanted to fix a neighborhood, but instead, she'd unleashed chaos. Yet, despite the shock, she was determined not to let this go quietly. Within hours, Karen was already emailing the HOA, complaining louder than ever. Her messages painted a terrifying picture of wild wolves roaming free, threatening children, pets, and property values. She called for immediate action, demanding the homeowner be reprimanded and the dangerous animals removed. The HOA board, often caught between Karen's endless complaints and the rest of the neighborhood's quiet acceptance, now faced a real crisis. The homeowner, meanwhile, wasn't just waiting for things to blow over. They knew Karen's actions had consequences beyond the broken fence. Not only was their property damaged, but their trust shattered. These wolves weren't just pets or animals. They were rescued creatures relying on the secure environment to heal and live safely. Every moment the fence was down was a risk, for the wolves, the neighbors, and the entire community. So, they called the local authorities and animal control to report the incident. The police showed up quickly, already familiar with the homeowner and their permits. They listened patiently as the story unfolded. Karen's side? Well, that was different. She insisted she was protecting the neighborhood. But the damage was clear, and her trespassing couldn't be ignored. Animal control officers inspected the property, checking the wolf containment and the damage to the fence. They praised the homeowner for their responsible care and warned about the dangers of tampering with such enclosures. The wolves, as calm as ever, were returned safely to their secure habitat, thanks to the homeowner's quick thinking. Word of the incident quickly spread throughout the neighborhood, turning the tables on Karen. People who once avoided conflict now openly sided with the homeowner. Social media posts and private chats buzzed with disbelief over what Karen had done and how reckless it was. Some neighbors even joked that Karen had tried to start a wolf party right in their backyard. But the fallout didn't stop at gossip. The HOA called an emergency meeting to address the situation. Karen was called to explain her actions, but many board members questioned her judgment. Was she really acting in the neighborhood's best interest? Or was this just another example of entitlement gone too far? Meanwhile, the homeowner used the opportunity to educate the community. They shared information about the rescue wolves, how they came to live there, the legal permits involved, and the importance of respecting private property and wildlife care. Slowly, neighbors who were once skeptical began to understand the delicate balance required to protect both the animals and the community. The homeowner also took steps to prevent future incidents. The fence was reinforced with stronger materials and security cameras were installed. Neighborhood watch groups were informed about the special animals and instructed on safety protocols. It was clear that living alongside rescue wolves required respect, knowledge, and care from everyone involved. As for Karen, the legal consequences loomed. Trespassing and property damage were serious offenses, and with witnesses and evidence, her case wasn't looking good. Some neighbors even wondered if the HOA would consider stricter rules to prevent similar Karen moments in the future. Despite the tension, the wolves remained calm throughout it all. They continued their slow recovery, unaware of the drama outside their fence. For the homeowner, their priority was clear: protect the animals and maintain peace in the neighborhood. But after this wild encounter, it was obvious that balance would require more patience and maybe a little more vigilance. The whole situation was a vivid reminder of how quickly things can spiral when people act without thinking. One person's fix nearly became a neighborhood disaster. But thanks to calm actions, quick thinking, and a community willing to listen, the chaos was contained. And yet, the story was far from over. News of the fence-cutting incident spread faster than anyone expected. It didn't take long before local news outlets caught wind of the story. A rescue wolf enclosure, a furious neighbor cutting through a fence, and a pack of wolves momentarily roaming free. It was exactly the kind of sensational tale that grabbed attention. Suddenly, the quiet neighborhood was buzzing with reporters knocking on doors and cameras parked at the end of the street. The homeowner, though wary of the sudden spotlight, agreed to speak, not to stir up trouble, but to clarify the facts. They wanted everyone to understand the care and responsibility behind their rescue operation. The wolves weren't wild animals set loose recklessly. They were survivors, given a second chance in a safe, regulated environment. This wasn't a wolf pack invasion, but a delicate balance between nature and human compassion. Meanwhile, Karen's reputation took a serious hit. Social media exploded with memes, jokes, and heated debates about her reckless behavior. People were quick to label her as a Karen who unleashed wolves, and the nickname stuck. Some neighbors privately sympathized with her frustrations about neighborhood rules, but few defended her decision to damage property and risk safety. The HOA also found itself under pressure. Residents demanded clearer rules and better communication about unique cases like this one. The board promised to review policies regarding animal enclosures and property modifications. It was clear that something had to change to prevent future drama. Within the community, something unexpected happened. The wolves, once a mysterious presence behind a fence, became local celebrities. Kids from the neighborhood started learning about them, and the homeowner began hosting educational sessions about wildlife rescue and conservation. People started to see the animals not as threats, but as part of the neighborhood's unique story. But the homeowner remained cautious. They knew that trust had been shaken. Karen's fence cutting wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a symbol of how quickly misunderstandings and entitlement could escalate. The reinforced fence and security upgrades were necessary, but the real work was in rebuilding relationships. Every day brought new challenges. Mailboxes sometimes received anonymous notes, some supportive, others critical. There were tense conversations at HOA meetings and quiet stares from neighbors who weren't sure where they stood. Still, the homeowner stayed focused on what mattered most, the well-being of the rescue wolves and the hope that, with time, the neighborhood could heal. The wolves themselves seemed unaffected by the human drama. Their days continued with careful routines, enrichment activities, and gentle care. Watching them, you'd see calm, curious animals adjusting to their environment, oblivious to the headlines or online chatter. As the legal process moved forward, Karen faced fines and potential restrictions, but the community was divided on how harsh the consequences should be. Some wanted a firm lesson to deter future trespassers, while others hoped for mediation and understanding. This whole episode sparked bigger conversations about boundaries, both physical and social. What does it mean to respect your neighbor? How far can one person go in enforcing their own vision of a community? And how do you balance individual freedoms with collective safety? It was clear that this wasn't just about a fence or a pack of wolves. It was about trust, respect, and the unexpected ways lives can intertwine. Even after the dust settled, the story lived on in conversations at block parties, online forums, and neighborhood chats. The wolves, once hidden, became a symbol of resilience and hope. And Karen? Well, she was a cautionary tale about what happens when entitlement meets recklessness. For now, the homeowner continues their work, caring for the wolves and living quietly, though more guardedly, in a neighborhood forever changed by one impulsive act. The fence stands stronger than ever, but the lessons learned go far beyond wood and wire. The days following the incident were a whirlwind. The homeowner was back to their usual routine, but everything felt different. Every sound outside the window, every movement near the fence made them glance up with a bit more caution. After all, the fence wasn't just a boundary anymore. It was a symbol of trust broken. The neighborhood had settled into an uneasy quiet, but the memory of what happened lingered in the air. People whispered behind closed doors. Conversations at the local coffee shop shifted from casual chatter to heated debates about responsibility and respect. Some neighbors expressed sympathy for Karen, saying she probably didn't understand what she was doing. Others were firmly on the homeowner's side, pointing out that personal property and animal safety weren't things to be taken lightly. Meanwhile, the homeowner took extra steps to strengthen the enclosure. They replaced the damaged sections with reinforced steel panels and installed a new locking system that was impossible to tamper with easily. Security cameras were positioned strategically around the yard, not just to catch any intruders, but also to monitor the wolves' behavior. The cameras served another purpose, too. They offered peace of mind, knowing that if anything unusual happened, there would be clear evidence to share with the authorities. The wolves themselves seemed unaffected by all the chaos. They continued their slow recovery, gradually becoming more confident and relaxed in their environment. Their days were filled with enrichment activities, hidden treats, puzzle feeders, and plenty of space to roam safely within the enclosure. The homeowner often watched them from a distance, grateful for the calmness they brought amidst the tension. The community, however, was still grappling with the fallout. The HOA held a special meeting to discuss new guidelines regarding private animal enclosures. Some members wanted to enforce stricter rules, fearing more incidents like this could happen. Others argued for education and better communication, suggesting that if neighbors understood the importance and care behind these enclosures, conflicts might be avoided. The homeowner volunteered to help with these educational efforts. They prepared presentations, shared photos, and explained what it truly meant to rescue and care for wolves. Slowly, some neighbors began to see the situation differently. What once felt like a threat started to feel like a unique opportunity to learn about wildlife and conservation. Karen, on the other hand, became more isolated. Her aggressive approach had alienated many neighbors, and legal actions were underway due to her trespassing and property damage. The homeowner hoped she would take the chance to reflect on her actions, but for now, the tension remained. Despite everything, life continued. The wolves thrived within their strengthened sanctuary, and the homeowner remained committed to their care. Each day was a reminder how delicate the balance was between human and nature, trust, and boundaries. The incident sparked an ongoing conversation about respect for property, for wildlife, and for each other. It highlighted how quickly a situation can escalate when someone acts without understanding the full picture. And it showed that sometimes the most unexpected neighbors, a pack of rescued wolves, can bring a community together in the most surprising ways. Time passed, and the neighborhood slowly began to return to its usual rhythm, but the impact of that wild day lingered like a shadow. People still talk about the fence-cutting incident, the moment when one person's reckless choice almost turned into a full-blown disaster. It became a story everyone remembered, a cautionary tale about respect, boundaries, and the unexpected consequences of acting without thinking. The homeowner continued their daily routine of caring for the rescue wolves, but now there was an added layer of vigilance. The reinforced fence stood tall and secure. Cameras recorded every movement around the perimeter, and neighbors who once kept their distance started to watch with curiosity. The wolves, once mysterious and hidden, became a symbol of resilience and hope in the community. More neighbors began reaching out, asking questions about the wolves and the rescue wagon. What started as wary glances through windows turned into genuine interest. The homeowner embraced the opportunity to educate, sharing stories about the animals' past struggles and how they were slowly healing. These conversations sparked a new kind of connection between neighbors, a shared appreciation for something bigger than themselves. The HOA, learning from the chaos, established clearer guidelines to prevent similar incidents in the future. They focus on better communication, transparency, and respect for everyone's property. Meetings became less about complaints and more about collaboration. Slowly but surely, a sense of community began to rebuild. Karen, meanwhile, remained largely on the sidelines. The legal consequences of her actions were moving forward, but more importantly, she had lost the support of many neighbors. The boldness that once fueled her complaints was replaced by silence and avoidance. Whether she learned from the experience or not was uncertain, but her story served as a reminder of the fine line between standing up for what you believe in and crossing into recklessness. Through it all, the wolves remained calm and steady. They thrived in their enclosure, their presence a quiet testament to survival and second chances. Watching them move gracefully through their habitat, it was clear they were no longer just animals behind a fence. They were part of the neighborhood's story now. This whole experience reshaped the neighborhood's understanding of boundaries, responsibility, and coexistence. It showed that sometimes the biggest challenges come not from outside forces, but from within, the choices we make and how they ripple through our communities. And while the scars of that day remain, so does a deeper sense of awareness. The homeowner continues their work with the wolves. Neighbors are learning to communicate better, and the neighborhood moves forward with a newfound respect for each other, for nature, and for the delicate balance that holds it all together. Months after the fence incident, the neighborhood had settled into an uneasy calm, but under the surface, things were still shifting. The homeowner kept a close eye on everything around the property. They knew the wolves depended on that secure space, not just for their safety, but for their sense of stability. Any disturbance could set them back, undoing months of careful progress. So every morning began with a thorough check of the enclosure, making sure the fence was intact, the locks were secure, and the cameras were working properly. Despite the new security measures, there was still a feeling that the incident wasn't completely behind them. At community events, whispers still floated about Karen's reckless act and the chaos it nearly caused. Some neighbors expressed sympathy for the homeowner, praising their dedication to the wolves and their calm handling of a tense situation. Others, though fewer by now, still questioned the decision to keep such animals in a residential area. But over time, more people began to appreciate the commitment involved in rescue work, and the homeowner became a quiet expert in the neighborhood. Educational sessions became a regular thing. The homeowner started inviting small groups over, walking them through the basics of wolf behavior and rescue efforts. They talked about the wolves' backgrounds, how many were saved from abuse or abandonment, and why a controlled environment was so critical. Neighbors listened, their initial skepticism slowly fading as they learned more. Kids were fascinated, eyes wide as they heard stories about the wolves' personalities and the special training involved in caring for them. Social media played a surprising role, too. The homeowners shared updates, photos, short videos, and thoughtful posts about rescue work. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with neighbors and wildlife enthusiasts alike chiming in. It became a space for education, support, and sometimes even humor. Memes about the wolf fence incident popped up, but mostly in good spirits, reminding everyone that while the event was serious, it had also brought the community closer. Still, not everything was smooth. Karen's presence, though quieter, lingered. She sometimes showed up at HOA meetings, voicing concerns about neighborhood safety and property values. The homeowner, however, kept interactions respectful but firm, making it clear that boundaries needed to be honored. The legal process around the trespassing and property damage dragged on, a slow reminder that actions have consequences. Most neighbors hoped it would serve as a deterrent to any future attempt at property violations. The homeowner also worked closely with local wildlife experts and animal control to ensure compliance with all regulations. They understood that keeping rescue wolves required vigilance beyond just fences and cameras. Regular inspections, health checkups, and emergency plans were all part of the package. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary to maintain trust and safety in the community. The wolves themselves thrived. Watching them, it was clear how much they'd healed since arriving. Their fur had grown thicker, their eyes brighter, and their movements more confident. They developed routines, morning stretches, play sessions, quiet hours in the shade. The homeowner often reflected on how far these animals had come, from uncertain survivors to a symbol of hope and resilience. Neighborhood dynamics subtly shifted as well. More people began to see the homeowner not just as a neighbor, but as a steward of something rare and important. Conversations moved beyond complaints and concerns, turning toward how the community could support rescue efforts and coexist peacefully. A few neighbors even volunteered to help with simple tasks like garden maintenance or checking fence lines, eager to be part of something positive. Yet, the story wasn't just about animals or fences. It was about trust, how fragile it could be and how hard it was to rebuild once broken. The homeowner knew that respect had to be earned every day. It wasn't just about keeping wolves safe. It was about showing neighbors that care and responsibility went hand in hand. Through it all, the balance remained delicate. The neighborhood wasn't perfect, and tension still flared occasionally. But beneath the surface was a growing understanding, a shared hope that with patience and communication, they could all live together, respecting both people and wildlife. The wolves, silent witnesses to all the drama, moved gracefully within their enclosure. They didn't know the full story, but their calm presence seemed to remind everyone that healing, whether for animals or communities, takes time, care, and a willingness to adapt. The homeowner's journey was far from over. Each day brought new challenges and small victories. But one thing was clear. What started as a crisis had grown into a story of resilience, learning, and the unexpected ways lives can intersect and change for the better.